Winaka and welcome to For the Record. The South Pacific Stock Exchange and the Itoke Land Trust Board have recently signed a memorandum of understanding, a partnership to bring financial literacy to people in the grassroots, landowners who have a wealth of money or who have landowning lease monies coming in and may not necessarily know what to do with it. So the SPSE and the TLTB have taken advantage of this opportunity that exists to teach people how they can invest wisely. And joining me in the studio tonight are the Chief Executive of the SPSE, Lateli Tangoro, and the General Manager of the TLTB, Mr. Tevita Kuruvakandua. Mr. Kuruvakandua, Lati, thank you for joining me on the show tonight. Let's begin by talking about this MOU. When it was launched, the SPSE and the TLTB expressed a desire to teach landowners about saving and investing. Let's begin with the TLTB. What exactly are the needs for landowners in terms of being money-wise?
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you for this opportunity. Okay, in terms of TLTB, we are trustees for the Itoke landowners. Financial literacy is a very important area for us, especially in terms of the challenges that we are facing right nowadays, in terms of meeting the expectations, the very many expectations that our Itoke landowners have. Previously, the Itoke Land Trust Board used to have its, I would say its core traditional role is just to issue land leases, lease Itoke land to tenants, and then basically wait for them to pay rent and then distribute it out to Itoke landowners in terms of a collective group. Okay, but the challenge that we're facing right now is that government has actually provided a new platform or a new sort of direction for TLTB to see or to align itself with the many government policies that have been put in place, especially with the framework of financial inclusion, whereby government is trying to bring into the mainstream those Fijians who at the moment do not have access to financial services or have readily accessible to financial products.
And how does the SPSE come into this picture? We're talking about SPSE providing financial literacy, but then it's a stock exchange, you're looking for investors.
Correct. At the end of the day, whether you're a saver or an investor, the end game is the same. It really is to build your wealth. And so in this particular instance, we were quite fortunate. We did see some progressive movements at TLTB. One of the policy measures was distributing to the individual. So all of a sudden, there were these individuals who had to make decisions themselves about what do I do with this money. Now that's where we can come in, or we can add value to that sort of policy agenda, because what we do have is the information. So they're looking for answers. We have some sort of information that could address those questions that they have. And so questions like, I have all this money, what opportunities do I have?
Exactly.
And we're only one of the many opportunities that are out there. And then what do I look at in order to decide which opportunity do I make the most of, or where do I park my money? And we can add value to that. We have that information with us. And you will notice that this is not sort of a silo-centric approach. The unit trust is doing the same thing. The banks are doing the same thing. But what our intention is not product pushing, so saying come to the stock market, invest your funds here, we have the best returns around, but to get them to understand the fundamentals first. You've got all this money, how, where, when to invest. And then once we've got that sorted, then I think the uptake of the product is a natural byproduct of that. They have the prerequisite knowledge.
Tevita, how much of a knowledge gap do we have out there with the landowners, given that this influx of money did not exist a few years ago?
Well, Edwin, as CEO SPSE has mentioned, this is not actually something totally new. It has been happening, but I think it's just high time now that because there's so many opportunities in terms of financial services and products that are already available out there in the market, that we, the E2K Land Trust Board, have to do our part in terms of educating, creating awareness, and providing information on all these financial services that are available as part of our trustee role to the E2K community. And we ourselves know that we cannot do it alone.
Is it unfair on these landowners, on these Fijians, to be left out of the cycle of the economy of Fiji?
We look at them as a very important component of the economy. They may be, in terms of the formal sector, we can say that there are a lot of economic activities they are already been engaged, that they are already engaging themselves with in the rural communities that the formal that it has not been captured formally. So for us at the E2K Land Trust Board, we only capture the income that we receive in terms of the leasing of their land. And to our surprise that, way back 5 years ago, we used to only collect $39 million in terms of lease rental. But since last year, it has almost doubled. We collected more than 70 million. So that shows the level of economic activity in terms of accessibility of land by tenants into these various areas that shows activities taking place in those communities. And whether the landowners are actually getting value out of the lease monies that they are receiving. Previously, we used to know that whatever they receive is normally, say, 80 or 90% of that chunk is used just on a day-to-day consumption. So what we're trying to encourage now is from a culture of spending it all, we want to go to educate them, provide the financial literacy programs and awareness to them that we need to shift. It's high time now that because of the many challenges that are operating in our external environment, we need to teach them that they need to go into a culture of savings and investments.
So the market exists, it's just getting them to come on board. That is something that I'd like to explore, but at this moment we'll take a short break. We'll be back shortly. Pulunaka, welcome back to the show. We are speaking with the General Manager of the TLTB, Mr. Tevita Kuruwakandua, and the Chief Executive of the South Pacific Stock Exchange, Latili Tangoro, and the issue tonight, financial literacy for landowners. Tevita, before the break, you were talking about how a lot of these landowners consume 80 to 90% of their income on daily expenses. Now we've got a situation where all landowners are receiving equal chunks of the lease money. Has that sort of led to people spending willy-nilly because they have all this money, they haven't had this experience before, and they just they get excited about it? What are some of the common expenses that you see?
Edwin, when I say day-to-day expenses, like some landowners just sit back and wait for these lease monies to come in. But now, as we open it up and have it distributed to individual landowners, we see that they are now more empowered as individuals to, based on the financial products that I have already made available, that it provides them choices. So most of them now are independently making independent good decisions that they wish to shift the way of spending that they used to do in the past. Rather than spending 80-90%, now we are seeing that they are making use of their bank accounts. Some of them right now haven't actually visited us to give us their bank accounts to have their lease rentals transferred to the individual bank account. So that to us is a good sign in a way that some would prefer to leave it with us until such a time before we actually transfer it into their bank accounts. Whereas some, as you are aware, under this new rand distribution policy, those below 18 years are automatically transferred to financial institutions to be saved there until they turn 18. And right now we have close to about 15-16 million that we are already transferred to financial institutions that will keep those funds for them. So for those below 18, most of them have been taken care of in terms of having a seed capital for them, that when they turn 18, at least they will see and appreciate that by virtue of being a landowner, they've got wealth already been saved and set aside for them for their future.
And that's something that the SPSE would be interested in targeting these young landowners who have this opportunity to sort of prepare for the day to come.
Correct, because the decision for them, the decision that they will have to make is further down the line. And so we have, X amount of years to educate them, to provide a whole array of opportunities, investment opportunities that they can park their funds in, what to look at, what are the prerequisites for investment, so that by the time they have to make the decision, it's sort of a no-brainer for them and they can independently make that decision. The good news about that is that it empowers the individual. They don't have to rely on, say, the trustee anymore, or some other their parents, who really at times have a completely different agenda than the child themselves. They could even make decisions about parking some of that funds for investment for their tertiary education, for a car or a house, whatever the future financial goal is. So it's more than just preparing them for when they make the decision, it's empowering them as well, so that they can independently make the judgment by themselves.
At the end of the day, we are potentially talking about landowners becoming shareholders or investing in the stock market. Yes. How do you bring the stock market to a landowner in the Kaunrove or somebody in the interior of Naitasiri?
Great question. In fact, that question is probably one of the fundamental questions that underpins this Memorandum of Understanding. Here you have the stock exchange, who has information, but primarily in English. Then you have the Itoke Land Trust Board that has the human capital that can translate that information. Also, the Itoke Land Trust Board understands the profile of their client base. What are their information needs? What are their future financial goals? And so under this Memorandum of Understanding, we can translate a lot of our investor education awareness materials into their dialect, into understandable terms for them in the Itoke, so we customize it for them and we make it relatable so that they can absorb the information really quite readily. That's one. The other is, aside from having information, the flip side is we don't have the resources. The stock exchange has about 6 staff members, and if you take away the 2 interns, that leaves us with very skeleton staff, all primarily English speakers. But we're supported by stockbrokers. Probably 1 is very fluent in Fijian. So we need the assistance of other agencies like TLTB, who can assist us in really proliferating or extending the information to all these landowners, and they're situated right across. Yep. The great thing about TLTB as well is they have the network already there, pre-established. So this is synergizing our efforts. It's not an issue, it's not a challenge, because as I've mentioned, the information is already there. It's just contextualizing it and translating it, and I think we've got the best partner for that.
Tavita, for a landowner, what is a common conception of investing?
Investment for a normal villager or Itoke landowner is something totally strange or new for them. When we want to share information or provide options for them in terms of how they could better spend their lease funds, most of them turn back and they get very angry on us. Even now, when we had ventured into implementing distribution of lease monies individually, we had a lot of negative comments and from the Itokes, and not only at community level, it has cascaded and gone right up to other sectors of the economy, in terms of criticizing us. Why should we be holding back lease monies for those below 18? You don't look after our kids. You do not understand our situation in terms of their day-to-day requirements. But what we would like to, even though they may be true to a certain extent, but I think it's always good to make a start somewhere. It's quite difficult for them to see that lease funds for their children below 18 have been withheld by us. But I think within the next 2-3 years, they'll come to appreciate that, at least some of their children will have so many thousands in their individual savings account that are currently being invested with financial institutions. And let me just give an example. Like right now, we have a land owning unit whom their members are below 18 years. They already have more than $100,000 saved for them. So you can imagine, Edwin, from that sum. We are grooming millionaires, children who will have $500,000 or even more than $100,000 in years to come. And what else can they ask for? Because government is already providing a lot of subsidies and incentives to all Fijians, including Itokais. So it's just a matter of creating this awareness and financial literacy, because we need to start somewhere and have a shift in mindset or in the way we look at money that are already available for us.
Devita, you've actually brought up my next issue about the shift in mindset, which is necessarily essentially much more difficult than sort of having these MOUs and going out into the community. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Right now we will take a quick break. We'll be right back. Good evening and welcome back. The issue tonight is financial literacy for landowners, and our guests are the General Manager for the Itoke Land Trust Board, Devita Kuruvakandua, and the Chief Executive of the South Pacific Stock Exchange, Latile Tangoro. Before the break, you mentioned it's an exercise in changing mindsets, which is essentially way more difficult than going in and doing workshops and training. The South Pacific Stock Exchange, you have technical expertise, you have the people who know the business, but how do you get around to changing mindsets, especially when you're talking about landowners, about people who are very closely connected to their vanua and the lifestyle that they've lived for hundreds of years?
We are quite fortunate, I think, at the stock market, because we've soon found that compliments to Fijian Holdings Limited, which is a listed entity, there is already prevalent information about investing. So when we do go down to the Matangalis or the Evusa, even villages, and we present to them, we always often start with Fijian Holdings. And it's almost like the penny drops, and they understand. It's a company that we're owners of, and we've put our money in there. They pay us twice a year, and the share price moves, and the value is this. So it's not like we're starting from scratch. But the battle about the mindset is a challenge, and that we understand and we acknowledge. We have found great benefit. It appears that the young professionals within the Matangali, it's always good to have them sitting in the actual presentations themselves, because they can catch on, to the benefits. For example, when we say, when you get your dividend return, it's not taxed, which means the income that is owed to you, the full amount is given to you. There's no tax applicable. You can transfer it to your child, and when you transfer, there's no stamp duty. It seems technical when we're speaking in English, but we contextualize that in Fijian, with the help of those who are translators for FHL. You will note that the FHL annual report is completely translated. So there's the English, and then there's the Fijian equivalent. So we, use their expertise to translate some of that information. Once we get the young people in, the young professionals in those forums, they then change the mindsets of the more mature. But it's aside from that, the message that we drive home, if you keep it at the returns conversation, you get this much X%, they push back and they don't absorb that. But when you get them to understand why they're investing, for example, don't invest the full amount, invest a small amount, and you can park it for a future goal, like a village development project, like a seed fund for your business, your village business. When you give them relatable examples as such, they are more inclined to hear, and the penny drops. I'll give an example before I, conclude answering your question. We had a young bloke who works for Office of the Auditor General. He had attended one of our public awareness sessions, completely conducted in English. Subsequent to that, immediately after the presentation, he asked, look, we've got about 25,000 that's sitting in a term deposit. We would like to explore other opportunities. So we went down, presented in Fijian, did the whole protocol as you would. You wouldn't violate whatever the cultural requirements are. We got there for a 7 o'clock start, didn't start till 8:30, but that's what you have to do.
Fiji time.
Fiji time, and then immediately after that, they were back with 15,000 to invest beyond FHL. They were looking at vision investments. They were looking at other opportunities, ATH. But you have to contextualize the message, get them to understand why. It's not throwing money to get the best returns, it's putting it in there for a financial goal. So we used examples like a scholarship fund. So you're putting that money, it's for a scholarship fund, but in order to make that scholarship fund grow, you invest. And you can always pull that fund out when you need it later on. Yeah?
Tevita, how far ahead do landowners plan financially?
I would say that perhaps 20 or 30% of the E2K they have made use of information that are currently available in terms of financial literacy programs, in terms of financial services, and they are much more aware. Mostly those who are linked, with the members who are well educated, and these well educated members, they go back and they spread the message. So in terms of the MOU that we have with the SPSE, we lack the knowledge in terms of the information, just like CEO SPSE saying, in terms of the available products, in terms of share information, the different companies that are listed and the various dividend rates that they offer and so forth. Those are the types of information that the E2K Land Trust Board needs, that because for us, our products involves interacting with the landowners on a constant daily basis. As and when the particular tenant would like to have a lease on a particular area within that community, we actually go and consult with the landowning unit members. So our approach is, when we go and consult, we take all the information that we have with us. And included in the inclusive of these details of financial services and products that are available, we can deal with it at the same time. And we also have a special landowners affairs unit that we established 3 years ago. And part of their core role is to enhance. Not only that we receive lease monies and pay to the individuals or to the Matangali members, but we want to see that those lease monies, they end up with something that is of value. Something that the future generation can look up to and say, oh, we are not merely just landowners receiving lease monies, but we are also future entrepreneurs, future micro-enterprise participants, that we can contribute something back to the economy.
And with that, we've come to the end of another segment. We have to take another break. Stay with us. Pulavinaka, welcome back to the show. We will continue discussions. Tevita, you spoke about how there are about 30% of landowners who are investing and saving and planning for the future. The other 70%, and we're talking about a lot of people when you say 70% landowners, I would argue that they don't have investment plans, or they are not financially literate because they've been left out in the cold for too long, left out of the economy, the cycle of the economy, and not being given that opportunity for many years now. Is that an accurate description? And how do we change that? Because that's the way they've lived for many years. That's the lifestyle that they're used to.
Edwin, perhaps those 30% are the ones who are actively engaged in the investments, in savings. And perhaps there may be another 30% to another 30% who are already literate but are just ignorant due to certain reasons. But there is another 40 to 50%, and that is where we're targeting it. These are the disadvantaged, the marginalized, and perhaps those the disabled. And so because now government is working towards a more financially inclusive platform, whereby we try and where all stakeholders are now being directed to work together and in order to capture the ones that have not actually been made aware of these opportunities that are available for them, and also been trained to see that there is more that they can do with whatever resources that we have. And also, Edwin, one of the advantages that we have noticed in terms of us distributing these monies, because we are actually forcing E2K individual E2K landowners to come in and open their bank accounts. And with that in itself is something big for, say, a 70-year-old or a 60-year-old E2K who hasn't had an opportunity to visit a bank, irrespective of whatever circumstances they are facing in their various communities. So by virtue of being a landowner now and through individual distribution of lease monies, they are now actually forced to come to the forefront to register, open a bank account, get a TIN letter, be registered with FERCA, so that they come into the mainstream and be tracked. And what, in addition to investment and financial literacy that we are doing right now, we always tell them, don't only think of your lease monies as being seed capital into your individual bank accounts. How about the other small activities you're doing? You may be a farmer, you may be a fisherman, or you may be weaving mats in the village, you may be selling grog on a daily basis. We would like to create that awareness as well, that they do not only rely on the lease monies that is given to them, but perhaps top it up with other small income. And so as we work with SPSE and the banks and other stakeholders, they would look at whatever is available in their accounts and say, oh, I think we should now put into practice what is being taught to us right now. And like I said, it's not too late to start. Perhaps some of them, we have already started with financial literacy programs. Most of our partners, stakeholders are already working on that, in particular the banks. And some civil society groups are already working on it. So it's just a matter of continuously drumming the information to them, that until such a time they will absorb and be aware amongst themselves that what they are saying is actually correct. And also, Edwin, we are trying to look at models, models, investment models that for those landowning units that have already started and have realized benefits from savings, so that when we go out and create this awareness, we can create these as case studies and as models of so that we can inspire. We would like to inspire E2K. See this group, or look at this family in this Matangali, in this province. They started a few years back, and now they have realized and they have reached this level. So I think E2K mindset is quite difficult to change, because we have been subjected to communal living, communal sharing of resources, and individualism is something that is totally new for us. But perhaps it's high time that we try this concept out, we try these initiatives out, because government's vision is building a better Fiji and more future prosperous society, and these are the members of the Fijians that have to participate proactively in the individual activities in whatever way within the small micro sector activities that all contributes towards
The difficulty that you've mentioned is quite pertinent, because one of the challenges that I can foresee for the SPSE is the perception that the stock market share trading is for the elite. It's for the businessman who has tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands, already in his bank account and can afford to take out money and buy shares.
Correct. And I think, Edwin, it's not endemic or particular to the Itoke landowners. It's a common misconception that's out there in the general public. But our awareness initiatives, if ever one was to participate, uses real-life examples. These are individuals, these are children, these are parents or guardians who've invested on behalf of their children. And we have, not only newspaper, articles that we, distribute around at these awareness sessions, but we capture them, live interview, and then they relate their story. And they sort of dispel the myth, and they say, look, I started with only 500 shares. There is no minimum requirement really for investment in the stock market. I invested X years ago, and now my shares are worth this much. It was actually quite fantastic. Yesterday we were at the Vision Investment Limited. It's one of our newly listed entities. We were at their annual general meeting yesterday, and there were all these institutional investors plus the high net worth individuals, like you said, ordinary mum and dads. But there was a young bloke, and his obviously looked like he was a student. And so one of the directors pointed him out to me, and I went and had a chat with him. And he's 18, started thinking about investing when he was 16, 2 years ago. Has a little canteen at home, so still in school, has a little canteen, reached the age of 18 earlier on in this year and decided, because of all the information that's available now, newspaper, website, that he'd like to invest in the stock market. And so he went about his journey, and I think another misconception is that you have to go about it yourself, but there are licensed investment advisors and brokers who do the thinking for you. They just understand what your appetite is and what your profile is. Then they direct you in the right path. So there's hand-holding that's available. You don't have to do it by yourself. But also, so this young man went about it and bought 700 shares in Vision Investment Limited.
At the age of 18?
At the age of 18, sitting at the AGM alongside FNPF Unit Trust of Fiji. And I thought that scene, I really wanted to take a photo of it, because you had a great cross-section. Individuals, parents, young professionals. Here's a student, 18, and then you have the institutional investors. The fact of the matter is, stock market, unit trust, whatever you choose, whatever investment product, it's for everybody, but you need to be informed, which is why this MOU is critical. But you also have advisors who will hold your hand and will help you make the right decision. They will also help you monitor, so that when it's time to ship out and sell your shares, you do it. When it's time to buy more, you do it. When the time comes for you to pass it on to your children, this is how you do it.
Okay, and we've come to the end of another segment. When we come back, our last segment for this evening. Kulunaka, welcome back. We're wrapping up for the evening, but before we go, we still have Ms. Latili Tangoro from the SPSE and Tevita Kuruvakandua from the TLTB with us. On a parting note, you've signed the MOU. Obviously, you have a vision for what the SPSE wants to see and what the TLTB wants to see with this, these millions of dollars which are made available to landowners. Looking ahead 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, what would you like to see landowners doing with this information and the money that they have?
Edwin, for us at TLTB, we would like to ensure that that they get the best information made available to them in terms of options that are available out there on which they can select and make a decision in terms of usage, good usage of their lease monies. So 5 years down the line, and one of the objectives of getting to this MOU with SPSE is to see that that all this information gets out to them. We hope that in the next few weeks that we will sit down together and work out a way forward in terms of what are the tangible things that we're going to do to actually carry out, to realize this vision. And hopefully, already for us at the E2K Land Trust Board, we have financial literacy training that we carry out for them as part of a target for our landowners department. So hopefully when we actually go out and do the training, we'll actually rope them in. And in preparation for those, to add value to our training, we hope to prepare brochures, training materials, translated into various languages, E2K language, so that it can meet the purpose, so that the message actually goes out to the landowners in very simple terms.
And for the SPSE, obviously you would want to see more landowners investing in stocks.
Yep, so quantitative indicators would include exactly that, the number of participants to increase, but not just that, not to increase for one particular product, which is, in this particular case, Fijian Holdings Limited, but to see them getting involved in a more diversified portfolio, exploring other stocks that are available. Aside from the change in mindset that GM has mentioned, and that would probably be very key and pivotal, we would also like to see perhaps in the long term how we could structure specific products that could potentially be tailor-made just for the landowners. We'd also like to see a shift from just thinking about taking my money and investing, but structuring of companies who then access the stock market to list, because that's really then more private sector involvement as opposed to just being an investor. Also, maybe 5 years from now, we'd also like to see SPSE move away from conducting awareness initiatives, and you'll have probably licensed brokers at TLTB, you'll have licensed investment advisors who are part of the TLTB team. So when we push away and we move to the other, another opportunity, they have a team that will continue the same initiatives.
Okay, with that, we've come to the end of the show this evening. Tevita, thank you very much. Latilita, Nawalevu, thank you very much for coming on the show, and best of luck in your initiatives.
Thank you.
And that was For the Record for this evening. If you have any comments or questions, you can email us for the record at fpc.com.fj. We'll be back again next Sunday. But up next is the My Say segment with Nemani Ndelembotiki. From me, good evening.